Mama, Mama, oh, Mama, help me. My sukrutum is on fire. Mama, my sukrutum is on fire. Wami busted into her son's hut, and the sight she saw knocked breath out of her. Talu was sitting on the floor with just a piece of wrapper covering him. He was writhing in agonizing pain as he held his crouch, shouting, "My sukrutum is on fire." "Talu, what fire? What is wrong with you?" Wami asked. "I don't know. Mama, help me. Mama, help me." Wami, feeling helpless, ran out to call villagers to come help her only son, whose man part is supposedly on fire. Soon, the entire village gathered at Talu's hut. They tried to proffer solution to his man part problem that was on fire, but nothing seemed to work. People brought medicines and potions, but the more they administered those medicines and potions, the more Talu's man part kept growing and swelling. His mother, Wami, had cried her eyes out, begging people to help her only son. Medicine men from neighboring villages came to help alleviate the pains Talu was in. But the more they applied their medicines, the more Talu's man parts grew. And the worst part was that he was in excruciating pain. He would scream all day and night, his screams piercing through the entire village. In just a few days, Talu's man part had become so enormous that it swept the floor as he walked. The length was so long that it could go round his shoulders. One of his friends had to come assist him carry his heavy sukrutum for him to be able to move around, as the weight was like that of 10 tubers of yam. People started to wonder what might have befallen Talu that made his man part grow and swell uncontrollably. The entire village was in chaos. Once upon a time, in a small, lively village of Oka, there lived a young and handsome man named Talu. He was a hard-working man who was diligent when it came to working. He was the only surviving son of his parents. His father passed on when he was very young, so Talu had to grow up rather quickly to take care of his mother and younger sister. But despite Talu's numerous good traits, he had one sickness: promiscuity. Talu was the Director General of Women Affairs in Oka. He was a chronic womanizer, a serial womb shifter, and a notorious innocence taker. His specialty was to chase after any maiden he set his gaze upon. He would chase relentlessly, sometimes for months, until he got the maiden's attention. He would sweep her off her feet with his wicked yet tantalizing words, and after he has had his full, he tosses aside for another. Anywhere you see women gathered, Talu is just but a few steps away. One time, Talu set his gaze upon Ziba, the village Tamara. She was a fair maiden, but people often looked down on her because of her stammers. But Talu didn't mind. He chased her and wooed her for months. One day, Talu was secretly meeting Ziba at the village stream, and she asked why Talu had been chasing her. She told Talu she didn't want any attention, but Talu, with his sweet words, told her he would be her voice when she needed to speak, that he would move mountains for her. He even proposed marriage that night. And that night, Ziba followed Talu to his hut, where her body was touched and caressed in ways she had never known before. That night, her innocence was also taken. But after a few days, Talu landed her a heavy blow. "I don't think I want to be with you. I mean, look at us. We are like two worlds apart. How can a young, handsome guy like me settle for the likes of you? Please look for your kind. I am no longer interested." Ziba cried, not believing what she had just heard. It was just a few days before that Talu made her feel whole, like she was the only girl in the world. Now she stood broken, the earth shattered beneath her feet. She cried for days and regretted why she believed her case was going to be different with Talu. That was also the case with Abima, the fruit seller. He showered her with his sweet words, and soon she started supplying him fresh fruits for free every day. Sari, the fabric maker, wasn't left out. Wumi, Dami, and Sally and other numerous maidens had all fallen victims to Talu's scheme. But despite how he treated women, they all fought over him. In fact, there was no day women didn't fight because of him, each trying to claim ownership of Talu. The women claimed that Talu had an impressive man part. Some said it was like that of a stallion, while others claimed that Talu could ride any maiden into oblivion, so they kept coming for more. Rumors had it that some women whose husband couldn't perform to their satisfaction in the other room would sneak out in the middle of the night to get a taste of Talu's divine sukrutum. Talu had a group of good-for-nothing friends. They were no better. They would discuss their escapades with each other and laugh in mockery at the maidens, calling them cheap. "That one, I have been there. She's a free giver," Talu would say, and they would all burst into a fit of laughter. After every encounter with a woman, Talu would table her matter and all his friends would laugh and shame her. Talu was even given nicknames: Talu the Conqueror, Talu the Stallion, Talu the Champion, Talu with the golden stick, and he would swear with pride, his face plastered with a grin. His mother, Wami, became worried and wary of her son's lifestyle. He called him one evening. "Talu, you are not getting any younger. You need to find a good girl and settle down. Stop living recklessly, my son," Wami cried out. But her advice fell on a deaf ear. Talu continued his promiscuous habit, not knowing his doom was near. "Help me! Help me! Oh, my legs!" Talu was walking the fields one afternoon when he heard the most enchanting voice crying out for help. He left what he was doing and followed the sound. When he located the voice, he was blown away. The sight before him was like nothing he had ever seen before. It belonged to a very beautiful maiden with fair skin that glowed in the sunlight. Her hair was long, sleek and silky. Her bosom full and ripe. Her full appearance was simply out of this world. It was beguiling, and Talu lusted after her body. He wanted to have a taste of her already. His sukrutum jerked to life at the sight of the sumptuous meal in front of him. All he could think of was how to remove every piece of clothing on her and ravish her body. But he kept his cool. Talu approached the maiden and asked what the problem was. She claimed that she had slipped and sprained her ankle in the process. Talu faked his empathy and feelings just to look like a cool guy, when all he wanted was to ravish her and devour her over and over again. In fact, he had already done that 1,000 times over in his head. Talu offered to take her back to the village where she would be treated for her sprained ankle, and the beautiful damsel obliged. Talu's grin widened as his plan to ravish her that night was set in motion. But what he didn't know was that the so-called pretty and innocent-looking damsel was a very big wicked snake deity who destroyed anything and everything in her path. The damsel followed Talu to his hut, where he offered her food and medicine for her ankle. But that night, something remarkable happened. She used her seductive powers to invite Talu into bed, and because Talu was a promiscuous fellow, luring him was easy. She gradually took off every piece of clothing on her, and she initiated a sacred dance that Talu couldn't resist. They danced, they wrestled, their bodies tangled together under the sheets, their essence and moans mixing together as they enjoyed the sinful pleasure they were currently experiencing. They wrestled more. Their battlefield was Talu's poor wooden bed that God destroyed in the course of their passionate affair. It went on for hours into the breaking of the dawn. They were both spent and exhausted from their lost affairs. Talu was blown away. He had never experienced something this magical. He smiled sheepishly at her while she stared at him with a knowing smile. mission accomplished. Talu drifted into a deep sleep shortly afterwards, and the snake deity, feeling satisfied with what she has done, picked up her clothes from the floor and walked out of Talu's hut, disappearing into the horizon. A few hours later, Talu felt a burning sensation in his sukrutu. At first, he ignored it, but the fire kept growing and growing, and that was when he woke up and realized the mysterious girl was gone, and he didn't even know her name or where she came from. In just a few minutes, Talu's man part started growing with an excruciating pain, and he had to cry out for help. Days turned into weeks, and Talu's man part problem persisted. The whole village lost its peace and quiet because Talu waited day and night. Healers from far and near all came to help him, but nothing seemed to work. The situation only worsened by the day. The village elders called for a meeting at the village square, where they unanimously decided to consult a very powerful seer. People said the seer could communicate with both the living and the dead, and see into one's future and past. The day the seer was summoned arrived, and it was a spectacle. The entire village gathered to witness the eyes of Talu, who was once a handsome man, now reduced to nothing but a desperate man with swollen sukrutu. Talu was carried out to the village square with his wooden bed. As he could no longer move on his own, he peed and defecated on himself on that same bed. The villagers gasped as they saw the state he was currently in. The maidens who he had used and broken their hearts were also there. Some pitied him, while others said he deserved what he got for being promiscuous. The seer got up to address the villagers, and the crowd fell into a deep silence. He began, "Young man, you have caused many young maidens pain. You have taken the innocence of countless women without even a fear of repercussion. You have even committed abomination by sleeping with married women." The villagers gasped and shouted in surprise to hear that Talu had been sleeping with married women. The seer told Talu, who was now a shadow of himself, that he had offended the heavens and nature, and that was why he is currently suffering. The village elders and Talu's mother begged the seer for a way for Talu to be healed, and the seer replied, "Your sins are too numerous to be forgiven," he said, pointing to Talu. "But you will be forgiven if you go to the houses of all the women you have wronged and beg for their forgiveness. And you must get a bride to marry immediately. That is the only way you can survive this. Else, your man part will continue to swell until you join your ancestors." The seer left the gathering, and the villagers left the village square one by one, until it was just Talu, his mother Wami, and the village elders. The youths were instructed to carry Talu with his heavy sukrutu to the houses of the maidens he had offended. Talu cried desperately, begging for his life as he apologized to each of the women. He promised to turn a new leaf and never live recklessly until his last day on this earth. He also begged each one of the maidens to marry him, but they all turned him down. They said they never want anything to do with him. After days of begging, Talu couldn't get any maiden to marry him. They all told him they had forgiven him, but they would never go back to their vomit. Talu was desperate. His life was hanging on his marriage, and no woman wanted him. His mother, Wami, too, went to the houses of women, both young, old, widowed, begging them to marry her son, but they all rejected her offer, saying they don't want anything to do with a public property. Days turned into weeks, and finally, their search for a bride bore fruit. Asabi, a beautiful orphan maiden, blind from birth, accepted to marry Talu. The villagers rejoiced as Talu, the promiscuous fellow, was finally getting married, with the hope of his gigantic sukrutu going back to normal. The wedding celebration was small, as just a few people gathered and did the marriage rites. That night, something remarkable happened. Talu's man part that had become so big and long that it swept the floor shrinked back to normal. The pain disappeared just as quickly as it came. Talu shouted, "Mama, my sukrutum is back to normal. Mama, my sukrutum is back to normal." His shouts attracted other villagers who came rushing to know what was happening. They were relieved to know that Talu had been healed, and they all sighed as they would sleep soundly for the first time in months. Talu never lived recklessly after his ordeal. He loved his wife Asabi and took care of her, showering her with love and attention. They later had 2 beautiful children, and they lived peacefully thereafter. The moral of this story is to not be promiscuous. Stick to your partner and be faithful in all your relationships. Avoid sleeping around, as you may not know when the snake girl or boy comes knocking.